Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, the world is witnessing serious tensions and war between Iran, the United States, and Israel. Bombings, political threats, and military actions are increasing fear across the Middle East and beyond. But in such a situation, an important question arises: what is the responsibility of Muslims? First, Muslims must remember that Islam always stands for justice and peace. Allah says in the Quran, "Stand firmly for justice, even if it is against yourselves." This means Muslims should not blindly support any country or government simply because of politics or emotions. Our loyalty must be to truth, justice, and humanity. Justice is one of the most important principles in Islam, and it must guide Muslims in every situation, including times of war and international conflict. When tensions arise between countries such as Iran, the United States, and Israel, Muslims may feel strong emotions because these events affect the Muslim world and global peace. However, Islam teaches that emotions alone should not determine our position. Instead, Muslims are commanded to stand firmly for justice and truth, regardless of political pressure, national loyalty, or personal feelings. The Quran clearly instructs believers to uphold justice, even if it goes against their own interests or the interests of people close to them. This principle shows that Islam does not support blind loyalty to any government, group, or political agenda. Rather, it requires Muslims to carefully evaluate situations and support what is right. In times of war, propaganda and political narratives often influence public opinion. Different countries present their actions as justified while portraying their opponents as entirely wrong. For Muslims, it is essential to remain thoughtful and balanced, rather than automatically supporting one side simply because it claims to represent Muslim interests or because it opposes another power. Islam encourages believers to seek truth, verify information, and judge matters fairly. Supporting justice means condemning oppression and wrongdoing no matter who commits it. If innocent people are harmed, their suffering must be acknowledged and opposed, regardless of their nationality, religion, or background. The Islamic concept of justice is universal and applies to all human beings. Another important aspect of justice in Islam is the protection of human dignity and life. The Quran teaches that killing an innocent person is like killing all of humanity, while saving a life is like saving all of humanity. This powerful teaching reminds Muslims that the value of human life is extremely high in Islam. During wars and conflicts, civilians often suffer the most, including children, families, and vulnerable communities. Muslims should therefore focus their concern on the protection of innocent lives, rather than being consumed by political rivalries or ideological debates. Justice requires compassion and responsibility toward those who suffer from violence and instability. Standing for justice also means speaking with wisdom and fairness. Muslims should avoid spreading hatred, misinformation, or extreme views that may worsen conflicts or increase hostility between communities. Instead, they should promote balanced discussions and encourage peaceful solutions whenever possible. Justice is not only about identifying wrongdoing, but also about encouraging actions that reduce harm and promote stability. When Muslims emphasize justice in their words and actions, they demonstrate the true ethical teachings of Islam to the wider world. The principle of justice reminds Muslims that their responsibility is moral and spiritual before it is political. Loyalty to justice, truth, and compassion must always come before loyalty to power or political alliances. By holding firmly to this principle, Muslims can respond to global conflicts with integrity, wisdom, and a commitment to the values that Islam teaches. Unity is one of the strongest teachings of Islam and a foundation for the strength and stability of the Muslim community. When conflicts occur in the world, especially those involving Muslim countries or affecting Muslim populations, maintaining unity becomes even more important. In situations like the tensions and war involving Iran, the United States, and Israel, Muslims across the world may hold different opinions because of political beliefs, cultural backgrounds, or religious interpretations. However, Islam teaches that despite these differences, Muslims must remember that they are part of one Ummah, a single community connected by faith. Allowing political conflicts to create deep divisions among Muslims can weaken the community and distract it from its real responsibilities. The Quran strongly emphasizes the importance of unity. Allah commands believers to hold firmly to the rope of Allah together and not to become divided. This guidance shows that unity is not just a social idea, but a religious duty. When Muslims argue and divide themselves into hostile groups, they lose the strength that comes from cooperation and shared purpose. Throughout history, division within the Muslim world has often led to weakness and conflict, while unity has brought stability and progress. Therefore, when global events cause tension or disagreement, Muslims must respond with patience, respect, and understanding rather than anger or hostility toward each other. One of the most common forms of division that appears during international conflicts is sectarian disagreement, particularly between Sunni and Shia Muslims. Political events sometimes intensify these differences and cause people to focus more on their disagreements than on what they share in common. However, Islam teaches that the fundamental beliefs of Muslims are the same belief in one God, belief in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, belief in the Quran, and commitment to prayer, charity, fasting, and other acts of worship. These shared beliefs are far greater than the differences that sometimes create tension. Remembering these common foundations can help Muslims avoid unnecessary conflict among themselves. Unity does not mean that Muslims must always agree on every political issue or interpretation. Differences of opinion have existed in the Muslim world since the earliest days of Islamic history. Scholars often disagreed on legal and political matters, yet they maintained respect for each other and avoided turning disagreements into hatred. This tradition of respectful disagreement is an important lesson for Muslims today. When discussing global conflicts, Muslims should listen carefully, express their views calmly, and avoid insulting or attacking others who hold different perspectives. Another important aspect of unity is focusing on shared responsibilities. Instead of spending energy on internal arguments, Muslims can work together to address real challenges such as humanitarian crisis, poverty, and the suffering of innocent people affected by war. Cooperation in these areas strengthens the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood within the Ummah and reflects the compassionate values that Islam promotes. Unity within the Muslim community is a source of strength, wisdom, and resilience. By maintaining respect, patience, and understanding during times of global conflict, Muslims can protect the harmony of the Ummah and demonstrate the true spirit of Islam. The protection of innocent lives is one of the most fundamental teachings of Islam. Human life is considered sacred, and every person has dignity and value regardless of nationality, religion, or background. In times of war and conflict, this principle becomes even more important because wars often bring great suffering to ordinary people who are not involved in political decisions or military actions. When conflicts arise between powerful nations or groups, civilians, especially children, women, and the elderly, are usually the ones who suffer the most. Islam teaches Muslims to be deeply concerned about this suffering and to stand firmly against injustice and harm directed toward innocent people. The Quran emphasizes the sanctity of life in a powerful way by teaching that killing one innocent person is like killing all of humanity, while saving one life is like saving all of humanity. This message shows how highly Islam values human life and how serious the crime of harming innocent people is. War may sometimes occur in history, but Islamic teachings set strict moral limits to ensure that violence does not become uncontrolled or unjust. Even in times of conflict, Islam commands that innocent civilians must not be harmed, places of worship must be protected, and unnecessary destruction should be avoided. Throughout Islamic history, many scholars and leaders have emphasized these principles when discussing the ethics of war. They taught that Muslims must always act with mercy, fairness, and restraint. These teachings remind Muslims that war should never be celebrated or treated lightly. Instead, it should always be approached with seriousness and concern for the consequences it brings to human lives and communities. The suffering of families who lose their homes, the fear experienced by children in conflict zones, and the destruction of communities all show why protecting innocent lives must remain a central concern. In modern conflicts, the effects of war can be even more devastating because of advanced weapons and widespread destruction. Cities may be damaged, essential services like hospitals and schools may be disrupted, and many families may be forced to leave their homes. Muslims should therefore be especially aware of the humanitarian impact of war. Showing concern for innocent lives means supporting efforts that provide aid, shelter, and medical assistance to those affected by violence. It also means speaking out against injustice and reminding the world that human dignity must be respected. Another important part of protecting innocent lives is avoiding language and attitudes that promote hatred or dehumanization. When people begin to see others only as enemies, it becomes easier to ignore their suffering. Islam encourages believers to remember that every human being is part of the broader human family created by Allah. Compassion, empathy, and fairness should guide how Muslims think about others, even during times of tension and disagreement. The principle of protecting innocent lives reflects the deep moral foundation of Islam. Muslims are called to care about the suffering of others and to promote compassion and responsibility in their actions and words. By remembering the value of every human life, Muslims can respond to conflicts with a strong commitment to justice, mercy, and humanity. Promoting peace and diplomacy is an important responsibility that Islam encourages, especially during times of war and international tension. While conflicts between nations may arise due to political disagreements, territorial disputes, or historical tensions, Islam teaches that peace should always be the preferred path whenever it is possible. War often leads to destruction, suffering, and long-lasting instability, affecting not only the countries directly involved, but also surrounding regions and the global community. For this reason, Muslims are encouraged to support efforts that reduce violence and encourage dialogue between opposing sides. The Quran repeatedly encourages believers to value peace and reconciliation. When disputes occur, Islam advises people to seek solutions through discussion, negotiation, and understanding rather than immediately turning to hostility. This guidance applies not only to personal conflicts, but also to larger political and social disputes. Diplomacy, which involves communication and negotiation between nations, can help prevent misunderstandings and reduce the risk of further violence. Encouraging diplomatic solutions aligns with the Islamic principle that maintaining peace and stability in society is extremely valuable. War often brings severe consequences that go far beyond the battlefield. It can damage economies, destroy infrastructure, displace families from their homes, and create deep emotional trauma for those who experience it. These consequences may continue for many years, even after the fighting stops. Because of these long-term effects, Islam encourages efforts that prevent conflicts from escalating and that create opportunities for peaceful settlements. Muslims can contribute to this goal by supporting leaders, organizations, and initiatives that work towards ceasefires, negotiations, and humanitarian cooperation. Another important aspect of promoting peace is the way people communicate about conflicts. Harsh language, insults, and the spreading of anger can make situations worse by increasing hostility between communities. Islam teaches believers to speak with wisdom, patience, and respect, even when they disagree with others. This approach helps reduce tensions and encourages a more thoughtful and balanced discussion of difficult issues. When Muslims communicate in a calm and respectful manner, they help create an environment where peaceful solutions become more possible. Promoting peace also means recognizing the value of cooperation between different nations and cultures. The world today is highly interconnected, and conflicts in one region can affect many other parts of the globe. Diplomatic relationships, international organizations, and humanitarian efforts play an important role in addressing global challenges and preventing crises from spreading further. Muslims can support these efforts by encouraging collaboration and understanding rather than isolation and hostility. Peace does not mean ignoring injustice or remaining silent about suffering. Instead, it means working towards solutions that address problems without creating greater harm. Peaceful approaches such as negotiation, mediation, and international cooperation often provide more lasting solutions than violence alone. When people focus on resolving conflicts through dialogue and mutual understanding, they help build a more stable and secure future. By promoting peace and diplomacy, Muslims follow an important ethical teaching of Islam that values harmony, compassion, and responsibility. Supporting peaceful solutions reflects a commitment to protecting human life, reducing suffering, and encouraging justice in the world. In times of global tension, this commitment becomes even more important, reminding Muslims that their role is to contribute positively to efforts that bring stability and understanding among nations and communities. In times of war and political conflict, information spreads very quickly through television, social media, and online news platforms. While this rapid flow of information can help people stay informed about what is happening in the world, it can also lead to the spread of misinformation, rumors, and propaganda. For Muslims, avoiding the spread of false or misleading information is an important moral responsibility. Islam places a strong emphasis on honesty, truthfulness, and careful verification of facts. These values are especially important during times of conflict, when emotions are high and people may easily believe or share information without confirming whether it is accurate. The Quran teaches believers to verify news before accepting it or passing it on to others. This guidance reminds Muslims that spreading unverified information can cause harm, confusion, and injustice. In modern conflicts, different sides often present information in ways that support their own political goals. Governments, organizations, and media outlets may emphasize certain details while ignoring others in order to influence public opinion. Because of this, it becomes important for individuals to approach information with caution and critical thinking. Muslims should take time to check multiple sources and consider whether the information they receive is reliable before sharing it with others. Social media platforms have made it easier than ever for rumors and false stories to spread across the world within minutes. A single post or message can be shared thousands of times before anyone checks whether it is true. Unfortunately, false information can increase anger, hatred, and misunderstanding between communities. When people believe inaccurate stories, they may develop negative attitudes toward others or support harmful actions based on incorrect assumptions. Islam encourages believers to avoid participating in such behavior because it can lead to injustice and damage relationships between people. Avoiding propaganda also means being aware of emotional manipulation. During conflicts, images, videos, and dramatic headlines are sometimes used to provoke strong reactions such as anger, fear, or hatred. While some of these materials may reflect real events, others may be edited, taken out of context, or even completely fabricated. Muslims are encouraged to respond to such situations with patience and wisdom, rather than reacting immediately with strong emotions. Taking time to reflect and investigate the truth helps prevent the spread of misleading narratives. Another important aspect of avoiding misinformation is responsible communication. Muslims should be careful about the language they use and the messages they share online or in conversation. Spreading hateful comments, exaggerated claims, or unverified accusations can contribute to hostility and division. Islam encourages believers to speak in a way that promotes understanding and fairness rather than conflict and confusion. When Muslims communicate responsibly, they help create a more informed and balanced discussion about important global issues. Seeking knowledge from trustworthy and credible sources is also an important part of this responsibility. Scholars, experts, and reputable news organizations often provide deeper analysis and verified information about complex situations. By relying on accurate sources and avoiding rumors, Muslims can form more thoughtful opinions and contribute to meaningful conversations about global events. Avoiding propaganda and misinformation reflects the Islamic values of honesty, integrity, and responsibility. By verifying information before sharing it and encouraging others to do the same, Muslims can help reduce confusion and promote a clearer understanding of world events. This careful and thoughtful approach ensures that discussions about conflicts remain guided by truth and fairness rather than by rumors or manipulation. The power of dua and the sense of moral responsibility are deeply connected in Islamic teachings, especially during times of global crisis and conflict. When wars or tensions arise between nations, many people may feel powerless because they are not directly involved in political decisions or international negotiations. However, Islam reminds believers that they still have important responsibilities through their faith, character, and actions. One of the most meaningful ways Muslims respond to difficult situations is through sincere dua, or prayer, asking Allah for peace, justice, protection, and guidance for humanity. Dua is not simply a ritual. It reflects a believer's trust in Allah and recognition that ultimate power belongs to Him. In moments of uncertainty, Muslims turn to Allah with humility and hope, asking for the protection of innocent lives and the resolution of conflicts. Praying for peace, safety, and wisdom for leaders shows concern for the well-being of the entire world. It also reminds believers that even though human conflicts may appear overwhelming, Allah has the power to bring change and guide people toward better decisions. At the same time, dua should not lead to passivity or indifference. Islam teaches that faith is connected with action and responsibility. Muslims are encouraged to support goodness and oppose injustice through ethical behavior, compassion, and positive contributions to society. While individuals may not be able to stop wars directly, they can still play a meaningful role by promoting understanding, supporting humanitarian efforts, and encouraging peaceful attitudes within their communities. These actions reflect the Islamic principle that believers should strive to bring benefit and reduce harm wherever possible. Moral responsibility also includes showing empathy toward those who suffer during conflicts. Families who lose their homes, children who grow up in fear, and communities that face destruction all need support and compassion. Muslims are encouraged to care about the suffering of others and to assist those in need whenever they have the ability. This may involve charitable giving, humanitarian support, or raising awareness about the difficulties faced by people affected by war. These acts of kindness and generosity reflect the spirit of mercy that Islam strongly promotes. Another part of moral responsibility is maintaining good character in speech and behavior. During times of tension, people may feel anger or frustration, but Islam encourages patience and self-control. Responding to conflict with hateful language, insults, or hostility does not help solve problems and may increase division between communities. Instead, Muslims are encouraged to speak with wisdom, kindness, and fairness, even when discussing difficult issues. Maintaining these values demonstrates the moral teachings of Islam and contributes to a more respectful and constructive environment. Dua also strengthens hope during difficult times. Conflicts and global crises can create feelings of fear or helplessness. But prayer reminds believers that they are never alone. Turning to Allah brings comfort, patience, and spiritual strength, helping Muslims remain calm and thoughtful, even when the world around them feels uncertain. This spiritual connection encourages believers to continue acting with integrity and compassion. Ultimately, the combination of sincere dua and strong moral responsibility reflects the heart of Islamic teaching. By praying for peace, supporting those in need, and maintaining ethical behavior, Muslims fulfill an important role during times of global conflict. Their faith encourages them not only to hope for a better world, but also to contribute positively toward creating one.